All right. G'day, everyone. Welcome to another Malts with Mates. I'm some whiskey bloke, and today I'm joined with Jarlath Watson from Donvilles and Donvilles Distillery. Jarlath, how you going, mate?
Yeah, hey, all good, yeah. Quiet Tuesday. Yeah, quiet Tuesday afternoon. Up here, yeah. You sort of lose track of what day it is in the current climate, but yeah, it's all good.
No, you said that, and I do these every single Tuesday. And then when you said Tuesday, I thought, is it Tuesday?
Yeah.
Is it not Sunday or something? What day of the week is it? All right. So I think first thing we always want to ask is, what are you drinking today?
Do you know, today I'm having tea.
You're having a
Um,
tea today.
yeah, because after World Whiskey Weekend, I'm giving the liver a couple of days off. We had a big Friday night and then a few on Saturday to celebrate World Whiskey Day. And
You
then,
do, yeah.
yeah, and then a couple of Belfast coffees from home on Sunday evening. So, yeah, I'm having a few days off.
You
So,
do need a rest after that, but I understand on Friday night you had the talk dram tasting
do you know,
where I
Mark?
think you've
Yeah,
there we go. So a
yeah.
wide range.
Um,
Unfortunately, I was out for I couldn't attend the tasting due to illness, but I've got them and I'm looking forward to cracking them open and sipping some and reviewing them all because I'm really fantastic. I'm really excited about the lot.
hey, yeah, it just went beyond, beyond what I was hoping for. Really, we were launching two Palo Potato single casks, one at cask strength and one at 48, and then we had a couple of cask samples. There's a 19-year-old Oloroso there, and there's a 19-year-old Oloroso, the same whiskey, but we'd taken it out of Oloroso and put it into PX for 3 months. So it was really an exercise in nuances in whiskey. So you were comparing two similar Palo Potatos in the same batch at different ABVs, and then you were comparing a 19-year-old Oloroso before and after 3 months of PX cask influence. And yeah, I mean, all four whiskies went down a bomb. They were just all received so well. I get really nervous before these things, because as good as I think our wood management is, and as much as Graham and myself taste them, I always second guess myself. So I'm thinking, well, I love them, and I've been tasting them for 6 months and I still love them, but the closer it gets to that launch, I'm sort of start to wonder, will anybody else get what I get, so once you get that initial feedback, you sort of calm down and start to enjoy it. So it was an amazing night for us.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
we launched the two whiskies that night, and I think the cask strength one sold out in 45 minutes, and the 48% one was all gone by halfway through Saturday. Although I think you might see a couple of dozen appear in Celtic shot. I'm not too sure, but they're pretty much all gone. So yeah, it was just every time we launch a cask strength or single cask whiskey, we're still amazed at the reception we get. Yeah, so brilliant. That was it.
Well,
Nice.
you've released.
Yeah.
I mean, you've released a slew of bottlings, all the ones I've managed to try at least, I can't keep up. They've all been fantastic. I think arguably the biggest one or the biggest reception I saw was for your rum cask finish.
The Port Morant, the 10-year-old rum cask finish, yeah,
That was the
yeah,
one, yeah.
you know, yeah, that was hit and miss. That was hit and miss. And that was the first single cast we done 6 months ago or 9 months ago, and yeah, we probably went overboard with the presentation box. We delved back into Dumbbells history, and we're famous for their mirrors, so we put a lead glass mirror in the box. We then sat down and wrote a book on the history of Donvilles, and like, writing a book doesn't happen overnight. We put the book in there, and then The 8 casks we got were from the very last year of the old Port Morant Estate Distillery. It then closed down in 1975, 74, 75. And we purchased some of the rum that came out of the very same casks. It was selling online for about £2,000 a bottle from the guy that we bought the casks off. So we bought some of the rum and put it in there in a miniature. So that cost us about 60 quid a bottle. So the price crept up and crept up and crept up, and probably got beyond most people's ability to buy it. And probably the annoying thing was that we've been tasting that since 2016 at Whisky Live and telling people that it will be €200, €250, €300, and then it came out at €650. And I think I stand over the price for what it was, and I'd always stand over the liquid. And the liquid was fantastic. I mean, it's just sublime liquid. That 18-year-old Port Morant rum furnace. The Port Morant cask just brought such a depth of demerara and molasses and cigar, that old dried up cigar tobacco, and leathery notes, just all those really luxurious notes. But we did put it out of a lot of people's price point, and I guess we took that one on the chin and learned. I think in a way we learned from that, so whenever we brought out our PX12 cask strength and our Palo Retardo that we're bringing out now, we really went back to basics, just put great liquid into a nice bottle with no frills. And I think people are responding to that, the rum furnace was a one-off. We wanted to make a real statement and put Donvilles on the map and do something that would get the world's notice. Do something that would get the world's notice, without spending a massive budget doing it. And I guess in a way it done that, but yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I can understand what you're saying. I can understand what you're saying where the price creeps up, but it's interesting for you to have that, because, as you say, you do learn from that, and then you can chop and change things next time to try and keep it at the more affordable, which is fantastic for a distillery for a whiskey brand to be doing.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it was a mistake, but if it was a mistake, we made the mistake at the right time, probably, and we've learned from it and responded to it, and I think that shows itself in the last 3 or 4 releases that we've brought out, so hey, do you know what? Yeah.
Well, I've just had a sip of the Palo Cortado, the 48%, and Jesus Christ, that is spectacular. It's wonderfully sweet. That's that nice brown sugar, creme brulee, a little bit of rhubarb custard. That's amazing.
A lot of guys were asking why we were doing one at 48% and not both at cask strength. And Graham and myself like to sit down and, I think we had 18 or 19 casks of Palo Retardo that was 18 years old, and we selected 3 of those 19 that we thought were good enough to be a single cask release. They have to be spectacular, but they have to be lacking in any bum notes at all. So there can't be any of those tannic notes or too much wood or whatever. So, and then what you try and do is as much as people say put it out at cask strength and let them find the sweet point, at sometimes we like to just put it out at what we think is the sweet point. Because that one at 48 doesn't drink well at 55. At 55 it was quite woody and quite tannic, and we just couldn't bring ourselves to put out a whiskey at that ABV that wasn't right. And at 48%, it's just perfect. The 55 has a lot more of those heavier sherry notes, a bit more wood. The 48 is a lot lighter, a lot more of those lighter citrus fruits come through as well. Those candied burnt oranges and orange peels and lemon, and those notes come through that aren't really in the 55 to the same extent. So with the 48 and the 55, you get a real contrast in flavour profiles, but they're both absolutely excellent. I think that the 48 is a 5 o'clock whiskey. It's 5 o'clock now, so I'll probably have one. And the
5 o'clock, yeah.
And the 55 is definitely, it's definitely a bigger hit. There's more going on there. But the 48, I just love the those lighter citrus and floral notes that are coming in. It still has those, unmistakable powdered potato and sherry notes, that you expect from a 18-year-old. But yeah, it's just that balance with those lighter notes that Graham and myself both really, really liked in this whiskey and wanted to bring out and highlight. And I just love the way it does contrast to the 55% cask strength version.
No, that's fantastic, and it's great to hear that you're bringing whiskey out as you think it is best. You're not simply dumping single cask strength releases onto the market. So I guess one of the things I wanted to understand, for those who are unfamiliar with yourself, Donvilles and Ecklandville, can you tell us a bit about you, Jarlath, and also your distillery and your whiskey?
Yeah, so Shane and Lynn Braniff, I work with Shane and Lynn and the husband and wife, and Shane and Lynn are neighbouring, they've been neighbours of mine. Shane's father and my father were neighbouring farmers in the same parish, and I started to work for Shane maybe 18 years ago. About the same time as Shane had another business in Belfast that was doing quite well, but he was getting a bit bored, and a couple of pubs and a hotel that come up for sale in our little area, and we bought them to run, and we decided that we didn't want to sell somebody else's whiskey. We wanted to sell our own whiskey. Whiskey back in 2004 or 5 to us was sexy. It was something that would be interesting and to work within. We wanted. We were farmers and we grew cereals, and we thought, so. We started off in 2004 or 5 with a Fashion Irish whiskey brand, and we were probably putting 20,000 cases a year into America back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, and it really took off. We did hem and haw about what would be the point at which we build our own distillery, but never really committed. And then in 2010 or 11, the treaty sale happened, and everybody had to get real or make big decisions. Did want to stay in the industry and build their own distillery or not? We had been talking about it for a while, so we quickly put those plans into action. And then we had this is back in probably the financial crash, so we had big decisions to make. We were using our own money, and we had no external investors. We're still a family-owned and run distillery, which is why we have so much freedom to leave the liquid until it's right. We have no pressure from shareholders or investors to put liquid out when it's too young, or our Ecklandville spirit is 7 years old, coming and not out yet. The Dumbbells spirit gets to stay in the cask for 2, 3, 4 year maturations. Anyway, yeah, we were doing fashion. Whenever we decided to build our own distillery, we thought we would need a more upmarket brand, and at that time the Donvilles brand just happened to be offered to us. We knew the history of Donvilles, that rich Belfast history, and we jumped at it. The Donvilles brand gave us an opportunity to differentiate between our third-party bonded and blending and finishing part of our business, and the Ecklandville part of our business, which is grow your own barley, malt your own barley, distill your own whiskey. So if it's grown, malted, and distilled by us, it'll be Ecklandville. And if it's an exercise in bringing in third-party whiskies, further bonding, maturing, finishing, then it'll be in Dumbbells. And in fairness, Dumbbells was great practice for Ecklandville, too. So, the both of them sit very, very well together. As I was saying to you earlier, we've Ecklandville malt that's 7 years old in August, and Ecklandville pot still that's 7 years old in November, and we have the luxury of not putting those out maybe until they're 8, 9, 10 years old, until they're properly ready to go out. My dream would be to not put out an Ecklandville whiskey until it can stand side by side with an Ardbeg 10 or with any of the great 10-year-olds of the world. That would just be lovely. If we could get to that stage. I'm not saying we will, but that's our hope at the minute. Yeah.
No, but that's a great hope, and of course you do want to wait until you've got the 10-year-old to release your first whiskey, because then you can make the statement of, look, we're here to be doing old whiskey. We want the age statement. We want something that can stand up with the big boys. And also, of course, you'd run into the problem of, if you release it when it's 3 years old, 4 years old, you might not have the stock to release further down the track. We spoke earlier, and you said if you release it when it's 3, you can't release it when it's 10, which is perfectly understandable. That stock is now gone.
Yeah, I think,
and maybe that would have been that could have been the best whiskey ever at 10 years old, but you released it when it was 3. So it's
I think it's the accountant in me. Whereas I'm actually the finance director of the company as well, as brand ambassador, on Blender and everything else. So I think it's the accountant in me that realizes that if I sell it at 3 years old for X, I can't sell it at 10 years old for 3 times X. So that's a basic sum too. But no, in fairness, I think first and foremost, we're whiskey enthusiasts up in Eckmanfield, Graham, myself, and all, we're whiskey fans. There's nothing more. We love sitting down to a nice red breast or a nice Glendronach or a nice, or whatever, Bushmills or whatever, and I guess that we want to position Eckmanfield there, so yeah, that's,
Well, I mean, it sounds like, so your distillery was completed in 2013, so you had almost a decade before, a decade of thinking about making a distillery before it became a reality. As someone who's been through that process, could you walk us through kind of what that is, and also tell us, are there any pitfalls that you fell into and you would think you would do these different?
Oh, we fell into them all. We didn't miss any. It's career-wise, it's been just an unreal trip. It's been phenomenal. I would do it all again in a heartbeat. I would do it with the exact same people again. I wouldn't change a thing. We've made mistakes. We've learned. We are where we are. We've had some lucky breaks. Getting offered the Dumbbells brand when we were offered it was a lucky break. The Jarlath gin brand that we produce and pays a lot of our bills and allows us not to put out whiskey at 3 years old was a lucky break away. We were well positioned to, I suppose we positioned ourselves to avail those opportunities when they came, but still, oh God, I mean, you should write 10 books on building a distillery. Building a distillery is only the start. I mean, you think I've got X amount of money, or I can get my hands on this and build a distillery. It takes X by 5 to run it. And that's maybe that's the biggest pitfall that probably most guys don't understand. How hard it is to feed stills, to keep the place running, to buy casks, and especially, one of the things we do very well is wood management. We buy in very high-end casks. I think that comes through in all our whiskies, hopefully. But whenever that cask invoice comes in at the end of each quarter, you sort of sit back and think, really, did I really spend that much on them? So yeah, I do it all again in a heartbeat. I do it with the same people again, but don't ever underestimate. It will put years on you. It will deprive you of much sleep. You'll not see your family for 10 years. And some very big decisions to make. And but I mean, it's, if you've got a passion for it, if you truly love the industry, love the product, it doesn't matter how difficult or how many ups and downs you have, you're going to love it regardless. If you don't have a passion for the industry and don't have a passion for the product, don't get into it, because if you want to turn a big fortune into a small fortune pretty quickly, build a distillery, and that's the truth of it, but but for shared life experiences, it's just been, and the people you meet, in the industry, we all say it. And the timing for us was right. We built it in 2012. We were probably ahead of the curve slightly. I think there was us, Bingo, Alltac, and maybe Tillingham at that time. I hope I didn't leave anybody out. If I did, I'm sorry. We were ahead of the curve, and I remember working up to our first whiskey live in maybe 2015 with one bottle of PX10. And thinking that we just don't belong here. And we would never belong there. And now, I think now we have liquid to match anybody in the room. Well, nearly. And it just, the satisfaction in taking it from working up with one bottle of PX10 to where we are now, with the PX12, the peated, the PX12 cask strength, the similar cask releases, the Palo-Cortados, and the cask samples that everybody always looks for now from our warehouses, it's, it's a lot of hard work, but you love it. I mean, you do love it, it's super. And I go to Whiskey Live every year and look around the room and see the same faces and new faces. And I genuinely think, that Irish whiskey is in great hands because I see the people in the room and the passion and, that's my favourite part of the year. Every year is just that half an hour before Whiskey Live kicks off because I get a chance to look around the room and just see how much talent and strength there is in our industry at this time, and then the mayhem starts for 2 days. but yeah, it's super.
No, you're correct, and it's always fascinating to head to Whiskey Live in Dublin and see every year to year, how many more people there, how many more brands are there, how many more whiskies are there, and just how many more people are enjoying it as well is really fascinating to see. I just cracked and I just bought a little bit of the Palo Cortado, the 55%, by the way, and this is an absolute beast of a whiskey. This is fantastic.
It's a different animal from the 48. Definitely the same family, but a different animal. It's a bit more of a robust whiskey. Graham and myself look for that balance in the whiskey at all times. I think the balance is definitely there. The balance in the alcohol and the flavour profiles and those individual flavour profiles. So I just absolutely delighted with those whiskies. Yeah.
So I guess a big question that brings in as well is what goes into you sourcing the casks, not just where do you get them from, but also what decisions, how do you decide we want a port cask, we want a sherry cask, we want a rum cask?
I guess for one, we would buy all our casks from one or two sources. We've worked with those sources for probably mainly one source. We've worked with them since conception. They understand the quality of cask that we look for, and they would know that the higher percentage of cask wouldn't be for us, but that smaller percentage will be for us. And we set that bar and we've established that bar with those guys, so we now have a great relationship where they'll phone us up sometimes and say, look, I've got these, they're definitely Dumbbells casks. And sometimes they're not what we're looking for, but we'll take them. I think a lot of the time we know what we want, because like yourself, we're whiskey enthusiasts, and we're seeking out, what's working well, what, not so much what's on trend. I don't think PX was on trend when we started using it. Palo definitely wasn't on trend. But we know those fortified wines, those sherries work brilliant with the spirit that we use. So, it's establishing a trust with your supplier and making sure that they understand what your expectations are, and we've got guys that meet that expectation, which is brilliant to work with. After that, you're working with, maybe the higher percentage of your cask order being the established cask you're using, and then you'll feed in some experimental casks. And we have a way of figuring out pretty quickly if they'll work. And then if we know they'll work, then we bring in more, and we do a batch. and and most of the ones we have, we've had one or two that didn't work with the spirit, but most of the ones, I think also we spent a lot of time sniffing cask and sniffing spirit and trying to figure out, sniffing cask beside spirit and trying to figure out, does this marriage work? I mean, Fionnán O'Connor came up to us. He was casking an Irish Whiskey Society double distilled pot still, and he came up to put it into either PX or Oloroso. And whenever he smelt the liquid beside the Palo Hurtado cask, he changed his mind on the day, and we had a great session with him, doing that exercise. So, and then it's a waiting game. You just have to wait and hope that it works. And in fairness, we've got more right than wrong recently. So yeah. But yeah, we know what we want, and we do a few experiments based on not what's on trend, but what we like from other releases. I'm a big fan of Madeira. In certain whiskies, a big fan of port. That Method of Madness port cask that came out a couple of years ago just blew my mind, and still blows my mind when I taste it. Not that I taste it very often, mind you, at the cost, but I'm lucky enough that Billy Layton shares it with me the odd time it shows, and our Liam Sparks, and yeah, it's nice to look around you and see what's happening. People like Glenn Donert do it very, very well too, so you're always looking further, to those guys, and maybe even Cavallan and different, further afield, to see what's working, and yeah.
Yeah.
But then it has to work with the spirit that you're using also, and that's the key.
Yeah. So I guess the big thing there is as well. Geez, I had so many questions and we've not touched any of them. Your the Donvilles range itself, that's independently bottled, and then the whiskey you'll be bringing out from your distillery, Ecklandville, will be your own. Do you plan to continue the Donvilles range once Ecklandville becomes available? For how long do you think you'll keep it available?
We will. We just have far too much fun with Dumbbells to let it go. We've really enjoyed building Dumbbells up to where it is, and we hope to build it up more. Dumbbells will continue to be what it is. Dumbbells will probably source whiskey from Ecklandville at some point, as well as others, but will continue to be that what it is, and run separately and side by side. With the Ecklandville project. What we've learned in the last 15 years, but in the last 7 years of operating in the Dumbbells brand, what we've learned that is transferable skills, obviously, onto the Ecklandville brand, is invaluable. And we just enjoy working with Dumbbells so much. So yeah, they'll definitely both run side by side, but there will be that differential in where the spirit comes from.
Oh, excellent. And you've mentioned we'll see the likes of single malt, single pot still from Ecklandville. Looking at all that, what are your current feelings related to the Irish technical file? I
don't really get too excited about it. I get the criticisms of it. I in a way I also get why it was written the way it was written. We were there. We weren't in the room, but we didn't have time to go down. We never do. But we were sort of there for the pot or for the potching one. And it needs. I think both need changed. Obviously, both need changed. We have distilled the Old Cumber pot still recipe, which would fall outside the current technical side. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that Old Cumber is pot still whiskey. It just is. It doesn't matter what a technical file says. Old Cumber is pot still whiskey, and so are so many of these other old recipes. The likes of Killow, Brendan, a friend of ours, and Blackwater, and whoever else are putting out. Maybe Kilbeggan for that matter. So yeah, it needs changed. But I don't get too excited about it. I mean, if I bring out if I bring out an Actonville Old Cumber release in 10 years' time or 20 years' time and can't put pot still on the bottle, it won't really bother me because it's still an Old Cumber pot still, whether it's in the bottle or not, and it won't change what's in the bottle or how it tastes. So, but yeah, I mean, but it does need changed. It does need work. But it had to start. It had to start somewhere too, you know. So.
Oh, got to start somewhere. I do want to point out, by the way, Andy from the Malt Box earlier said that he's yet to try Donvilles, but has heard great things about it. And Mick, still surreal, your Dumbbells, the latest talk round tasting, Mick's over in the UK, and your samples made it over to him, and he absolutely loved them. So you know, you're reaching everywhere, it seems.
Yeah, we made the conscious decision to take over to the UK with that talk round tasting, you know, and not just to keep it on the island of Ireland. We want to bring those guys in, and because they're not as used to our brand, so we wanted to see what somebody who wasn't as used to our brand thought of it. And yeah, they loved it. So, you know, yeah, that was still on a high from that night, you know.
No, it's fantastic. And I guess as well, just scooting back to this because we passed it a while ago and I completely forgot this question. So you are bringing back the spirit of Belfast.
Yeah.
And that's Dumbbells. What went into you know, discovering or rediscovering and resurrecting that brand?
Oh, you know, we were aware of it. We were aware of it. I suppose we didn't really think it would be available. It was the Russell brothers. They owned a big off-license chain in Northern Ireland, and they had it. A couple of guys had tried to do it in the 70s and 80s to bring it back, but I think in truth, they just used 3 and 4 year blend and didn't really give it the quality that it deserved and the attention it deserved. The decision, so they knocked our door, and we got it for a couple of casks of Newman and a few quid. You know, I mean, it was a great deal for both parties at the time. It was a great deal for us in hindsight. It goes back to I remember the Friday afternoon that we decided, in the heart of the British recession in 70 years, to build a distillery. We had been offered money from InvestNI, and we had to decide that day whether to take it and build a distillery or not. And it was a huge decision for us because Shane and Lynn, their life savings were cashed in, the pensions were cashed in, the assets were sold. It was literally putting your future into the distillery. You know, this was not third-party investors' money. This was your everything. This was all your eggs in one basket. And we sat about 7:30 that Friday night before we decided we would do it. We made 2 promises that night. We said we would still be here in 10 years' time, and if we had to turn the stills off, we had to run it. We would run it in a way that we could afford to run it, and we'd still be here in 10 years' time. And 7 years done, so fingers crossed. The second promise was that we would take on Dumbbells, and we would give Dumbbells the credibility it deserved. I think the words we used that night, and we still use them now, is we would put Dumbbells back at the top table of world whiskies. And what that meant was what we've done, you know, sourcing good liquid, sourcing the best cask, putting out really high-end, what we hope to be world-class spirits. You know, world-class 12-year-old, a world-class blend, a world-class 18-year-old, a world-class 19-year-old, you know. We always look at it and say, can I put that 12-year-old or that 12-year-old cask strength on a table at a whiskey show internationally and say, that's our 12-year-old, and it'll stand up to any 12-year-old on the table? You know, I guess that's the sort of, that's our thought process whenever we're developing and bringing out the whiskies. And if we think it does, if we think we can, we'll bring it out. If we think we can't, we'll park it and do something else with it. But, you know, we within ourselves, we try and set the bar that high, because we did not want to bring back this old brand and, you know, just pillage it or whatever. You know, we refer to ourselves as being the custodians of Dumbbells. You know, we didn't invent it. It's not ours to own. We look after it. We've taken it on board. Somebody else will take it on board after us, whether it's people that come after us in Acton or somebody else, and hopefully we pass it on to them in a far, far better place than we got it, and our job's done. And so we are very reverent in towards Dumbbells in that way. You know, we appreciate what it was, the history of the brand. We work with a neighbour of ours, an absolutely fantastic designer who really gets that era and really gets what the brand was, and he has brought all that old imagery back, but in a modern way, and it's just, you know, and we're just delighted with it. So, so yeah, you know, Royal Irish Distillers, formed in 1808, closed down in 1936, went silent. We brought it back in 2012, and we, at all times, we try and pay respect to the heritage of the brand. We could have changed the label. We could have worked away from some of the, you know, the fee or the crown or some of those things that some people might, you know, we chose to carry on with them. They are the brand, you know, they're part of the brand, you know. I mean, we change the ethos, but you know, yeah, we just love what we're doing with it, you know, we are proud of the fact that we're taking what was a sleeping giant, maybe, you know, and really bringing it back to life and telling people about it and getting it out there, and the liquid in the bottle, you know, does it justice, and I guess we're proud of that.
That's fantastic. And you've obviously tried the old. Have you managed to try the old Dunvilles?
Yeah, you know, we actually hadn't. We have bought not a lot of it, but we bought enough of it. But we had an event, a Dumbbells Past, Present, and Future event in the distillery last September, I think, October. We opened an old 1930s Three Crowns. We opened some of our own product and some warehouse samples from the future, and we had a food pairing, and a lot of people came to try the old Dumbbells and the new and the warehouse samples, and we weren't sure what to expect. Some of these bottles were very hit and miss. We knew what the flavour profiles were. We know that both Donvilles and Cumber were using maybe a third sherry, two-thirds port, or two-thirds sherry, one-third port, somewhere in that ballpark. It changed every year, you know, but it was mostly sherry and port casks. This is before World War II, so this is before bourbon casks really became the norm in Ireland and Scotland. You know, before that, sherry and port and fortified wine casks were the norm. And I refer you back to, it must have been late October, because I was just back from the Whisky Exchange show in London, and Billy and Liam Sparks had shared some of the Method of Madness 28 with me, and that just those most amazing port notes. And as soon as we opened the Dumbbells bottle, that was that same port notes that I got, and not to the same quality as the Method of Madness 28, but the port, you know, there was definitely port cask influence in there on sherry cask, and it was still very alive and very fresh for being there 70 years. I mean, it was a lovely whiskey. I wasn't too sure what to expect, but we opened one in Cork then in February. We're done a tasting on Eric. Eric got one from his private collection, brought it to tasting, and we opened it, and it's a very similar flavour profile, you know. So they are lovely. I mean, if you get your hands on them, and they are. It's an amazing thing to open a bottle of whiskey that was bottled in the 1920s and think, you know, this has been undisturbed for nearly 90 years now. We bought a case, and it's unopened, a case of 24 bottles that's unopened since 1938, you know. So the fact that there's a full case of the meals have been there since, you know, that's, you know, I don't know if we'll ever open that or not, but you know, it's just, yeah, you know, it's every bottle you drink is one less bottle in the world, so you do feel that whenever you consume it. You know, you do feel that, yeah, you definitely sense that whenever you consume it, that it is something special. You know, it's just lovely to do it. Yeah.
No, I know something of that age. It is venerable. I understand where you're drinking whiskey that we call it whiskey, but technique, ingredients, everything would have been so different at that point in time. So then it shares the name in common, but things have evolved since then. All procedures have evolved.
Yeah, but funny, Mark, is that that was my expectation as well. That this would be very different from what we very different from what we currently have, but it was very similar. In truth, it was a lot more similar than I was expecting. That was probably my biggest surprise. That this stuff could have been bottled in the 80s or early 90s, and you couldn't have argued with it. You know what I mean? So it wasn't that far removed. It wasn't as far removed as you might think before you try it. That was a very pleasant. That was pleasantly surprising. The more things change, the more they stay the same in the whiskey game in some ways. Especially the fact that there's sherry and port casks, and sherry and port are so unfold now. So yeah.
Well, I guess that's the thing where I think every single country's whiskey regulations tend to say it should be a distillate of these materials, and it should have the flavors and aromas genuinely consisting with whiskey or something along those lines. So I guess when we have that Dunvilles from the 30s and then through the years and gradually those laws have taken shape and people go, this is what it tastes like, so things can change, but they need to stay the same, as you said, it's fascinating to hear.
I did enjoy the fact that it hadn't moved on that much. I found that reassuring, yeah, I did.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, I guess I didn't even realise, but that's been going for 40 minutes here, and it looks like a couple of people have been with us the entire time. Mick, again, says, wow, I think he loves the idea of trying something from the 30s. I believe that's what he's responding to. But
well, tell Mick that we will do it again this year, so keep an eye on the website and then get himself over. If we ever get the distillery reopened, we will be doing that again. So yeah.
There you go, Mick. Keep eyes and ears open. Keep a look at Donvilles' website, and you might get the chance to taste a whiskey from almost 100 years ago. Jesus, that sounds insane saying it.
It is. It is. Yeah. Once you pop that cork and realize that it's not, it hasn't gone off. It's not. That it's still good. Then it's just. I mean, everybody. It was one of the best nights we've had in our distillery. Everybody just had to. We all knew we were doing something special, and we all just had a really, really fun night. Everybody was just there for the same reason, to celebrate this whiskey, and I thought it was wonderful. It was Belfast Whiskey Club come down with about 15, 20 of their members, and it was wonderful. Yeah, it was a great night. Yeah.
You want to have a good night with something like that. I guess, so we'll start coming to a close now, but I always like to do a little bit of a quiz at the end. Sometimes I like to do whiskey questions, sometimes I like to do sports questions. From the reaction that the sports questions have had over the last couple of weeks, I think we're going to stick with whiskey, because sports questions tend to alienate those people who don't watch sports, and if it's anything but rugby, I have no idea what the hell I'm talking about.
If it's Arsenal, I'm good. If not, we'll pass.
All right. So we'll start off with the first question here. True or false? Irish whiskey must be matured for 3 years and a day.
False.
Yeah. Irish whiskey, the file stipulates 3 years of aging. We do hear in a lot of tours and in a lot of discussions, people saying Irish whiskey needs to be aged for 3 years and a day. I'm not sure where they've gotten that from.
The one day came in. The one day was a revenue advice to make sure that it was 3 years. If it was, if you fill a cask at 11 p.m. and open it at 11 a.m., it's not 3 years. So the one day came in just to make sure you reach that 3 year stage.
I think that's the best answer we could have had. That's a fantastic answer. I love that.
That's my understanding of it. Again, that's the accountant coming out of me, I believe, but that's my understanding of it. But yeah.
All right, so we've got a couple of questions here. Some more here. What is the oldest distillery on the island of Ireland?
The oldest operational distillery?
The oldest continuously running distillery that's still open today.
Kilbeggan is the oldest that's still open, but I suppose it wasn't continually running, but Kilbeggan is the oldest distillery open today.
Kilbeggan's the oldest continuously running. The oldest continuously running I've got is Bushmills,
Bushmills,
which
yeah,
is.
Bushmills continually running, yeah, yeah.
I chose this one because I know you're up in the north there, and I've got some questions about Bushmills for you. So I hope you've brushed up on that recently.
Do you know? We'll see.
So Bushmills state a date on their bottle, though this is not the date the distillery was formed.
1608.
1608 is the date that's stipulated on the bottle. Do you know what date Bushmills was formed and what the 1608 date actually refers to?
I know that 1608 is a date that King James, whoever first granted a license to somebody in that general area, I'm going to guess the distillery must have been about 170, late 1700s?
Yeah.
Late.
You're completely correct there. Bushmills was founded in 1784, and that 1608 date refers to Sir Thomas Phillips was granted a royal license for distillation through Coleraine and the route. Curiously, I think it was about a dozen years later or so that license was actually taken away. So while that was one of the oldest licenses granted for distillation in Ireland, that license existed for a very small period of time.
I didn't know that last bit, but hey, it's a good story. I mean, it's a good story.
It's fantastic. Apparently there was favoritism, so they stripped the license. But I can understand. You only want your mates distilling whiskey. That's fair enough. Which of these styles could you legally state on a bottle of Irish whiskey? Malt Irish whiskey, grain Irish whiskey, blended malt Irish whiskey, or pot still Irish whiskey?
Which one can you legally state?
Which one can't you?
Which
one is not allowed?
I believe blended malt isn't a category yet, is it?
Yeah, for some strange reason, blended malt is not recognised as a term. Yeah. I've not been able to figure this out myself. Blended whiskey is recognised, but blended malt and blended grain are not recognised terms. I'm unsure about that one by myself. Hopefully, if anyone knows anything about the technical file, they could reach out and tell us why, but always interesting. And for the last one, because I just found this out today and I got a kick out of it.
Oh dear.
According to GI within the technical file, Irish whiskey must be spelt with an E. True or false?
False. I should read the technical
file.
No, false. Yeah.
Yeah, as far as geographical area and GI is concerned, within the technical file, you can spell Irish whiskey with or without the E, though it is customary for the E to be included. I read that today when I was reading for a completely separate piece of work. I read up on that and I thought, that's insane.
I think the whole...
This makes no sense.
No, the whole E or no E is a whole book in itself, that somebody will write, I mean, it all, I believe it dates back to trying to differentiate on the quality of Dublin and Irish pot still whiskey to whiskey using a continuous column, an F Coffey's column, whenever they started making grain whiskey and making blends, they wanted to differentiate this. This was sacrilege. And I believe they wanted to differentiate. We tried to have that not called whiskey, but something else that you couldn't call that whiskey. We failed in that. We petitioned the British government back in the day, and that failed. So in order to differentiate our true Irish style of pot still whiskey from grain whiskey, we put an E in. To differentiate, I believe that might be the story. I'm sure somebody will correct me in 2 minutes. But
say again?
Not right. I'm guessing somebody will correct me in 2 minutes if that's not right, but I believe that's probably the bones of it.
I mean, I've heard much the same, that you had the what is whiskey debate with exactly what you were saying, where there was the continuous distillation versus the batch. Ireland was saying that you couldn't consider continuously distilled product whiskey, whereas Scots were arguing something different. And I mean, it all comes down to it all tastes good. I think actually my favorite thing from around that time, I remember reading about there was a continuously distilled whiskey, and there was an advertisement that said, "Not a headache in a bottle." It would advertise continuous distillation, not a headache in a bottle, and it was trying to say that it's continuously distilled. If you drink a bottle of it, you won't have a hangover. And I thought that's not true for anyone watching. If you drink a bottle of whiskey, it doesn't matter how it's distilled, you will have a hangover the next day. Don't drink a bottle of whiskey in one night. That's not a good idea.
The old advertising rules we would love to have them back.
Oh, they were insane. Oh my god, I'd love to have them back just for like 6 months, just to see what people come out with, and then we got to come back. We got to scale it back now.
Yeah. The Dunvilles. Some of the old Dunvilles adverts would encourage you to buy it by the case. You buy it by a case of 24 bottles. So a lot of the old Dunvilles buy it by the case. Not too sure that would float now, but yeah, it's nice to look back on.
I'll make sure when I make a clip, an excerpt from this video, I get just the bit where you're saying Donvilles by the
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, do. Yeah.
Anyway, look, that's everything we have time for. I guess the only thing that I want to ask now is, where can we see more of Jarlath, and where can we hear more about your whiskey?
Oh God, it's getting harder and harder to. I mean, I suppose we're all online now. We're all moving to online platforms. I guess we've just got over the big tasting and launch on Friday night, and now we're going to look and see what's next. We have a third Palo Potato cask that we had selected. It's not bottled yet, but it was working really well at 52%. So we'll taste that again and see how that is. We have got one or two more casks of PX that work well at cask strength. We have the Oloroso and the other 19-year-old that you have there. So we're going to spend a week or two evaluating those casks, and then we'll decide what we're doing, and then you'll be hearing about it in due course, what the next single cask releases are. And then we have a few other cask strength expressions that we've been asked to work on, and we'll look at that. So I guess for the meantime we're all operating online. So yeah, Donvilles.com and the usual Twitter and Facebook and Instagram sites, just to see what's happening. But I hopefully in 2 or 3 weeks we'll have something else bubbling to keep the whole thing going.
Sorry, I think I lost you there for a second. Just for the last 5 seconds of that, can you just repeat the last 5 seconds?
Yeah, no, I was just saying that hopefully within a week or two we will have made a decision on what our next release will be, and then we'll start talking about that very soon.
No, fantastic. We can't wait to hear more about what you're bringing out and what more the distillery is doing. Thank you so much for coming on today, and thanks to everyone at home for tuning in. I've been some whiskey bloke. This is Jarlath Watson of Dumbbells and Ecklandville. Thank you so much for everything, Jarlath. Fantastic to have you on.
Thank you.
Blanche.
Yeah, we'll have that. Cheers.
Cheers.